All right, everyone, let's get started for today. So today is the fourth session of AI 101 by Wish, and today we're going to be talking about career paths in AI, which I'm sure many of you are interested in and still deciding what you want to do in high school, what you want to do in college. So this is just great if you want to go into AI and data science and etc. when you grow older. So yeah, and of course at the end, as always, there's Kahoot, and let's begin the lesson.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Audrey. I go to Montgomery Blair High School and I'm a junior.
Hi guys, my name is Pranava Nidumolu. I go to Thomas Jefferson High School and I'm a rising senior.
Hi guys, I'm Wang. I'm from Centennial High School. I'm a rising senior.
Hi guys, I'm Iris Crow. I go to Thomas Wharton High School and I'm a rising junior.
Hi guys, my name is Lucy Wu and I am a rising junior at Winston Churchill High School.
I'm Faith Cheung. I'm a rising senior at Richard Montgomery High School.
Hi guys, my name is Justin. I'm a rising junior at Churchill High School.
All right, so as you can tell today, or in Wish AI 101 series, we have 6 lessons. Today is the 4th, taught by Audrey, Pranava, and Lucy. It's about careers in AI, and there's only 2 more, but we do have a special 7th session, which isn't going to be a lesson, but it's going to be a guest speaker from a really cool company called In Silico Medicine that we talked about 2 weeks ago, and he works with AI in the coronavirus and in medicine and pharmaceuticals, and he's really, really cool. So I would really suggest you attend the 7th session on August 14th. Yeah, go ahead, Audrey and Bravo.
Okay, so like Faith said, every lesson, at the end of the class, we're gonna have a Kahoot, and everyone who participates in the Kahoot gets 1 point for participating. The people who place in the top 5 are gonna get additional points. And so at the end of the 6 classes, all your points are gonna accumulate and you can trade them in to enter a raffle or for prizes. Okay, so before we get started with this week's lesson, we're gonna do a quick recap of what we learned last week. So last week, our lesson was about what is data. The definition of data is information that has been bundled in a way so that computers can understand it. And we also went over next we went over what learning is. So the dictionary definition of learning is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, study, or by being taught. And the 2 types of learning we went over last week were machine learning and human learning. So you guys all know what human learning is. It's the way in which us humans learn. And basically some examples of this would be learning from observing other people or learning through trial and error. And we also learned what algorithms are. Algorithms are sequences of instructions for completing a task. And machines use these in machine learning for machine learning or to learn how to make decisions.
Okay, so from last week, we also learned the machine can only make predictions from the data they are given. So they cannot give you 100% sure answers, but they can only tell you that what is likely. So another AI programs can answer to any given solutions directly programmed into them. So you need to give a program to let them to know how to give the solutions. They can only make predictions. And this data, the data they use to make those answers come from us, the users. And we have privacy policy that tells you what data the company will take from you, and terms and agreements is a set of rules and guidelines you must follow to use the company's products. So those are different, but are basically deal with your privacy when you're using a product. And so from last week, we also know that sharing your data is risky. So how can we protect it? The first thing is very important is to read the privacy policy. Although I know a lot of us just click on agree without reading it, but it is very important. And the second thing is using different passwords for different social medias or different account you have. And the last thing is to being careful online and don't give your information to strangers. Okay, so now we're going to do a poll. So do you think that new AI can change or affect existing jobs? All right,
Okay,
so a lot
of you said.
yeah, say yes. That's cool. You guys will see today that will prove your answers.
So what are some problems you guys want to fix in the world? It can be anything from as small as having a better locker at school or to solving something worldwide such as global warming. So what are some problems you think you could want to fix? There's many problems. Food waste, yeah, pollution, definitely big things. And what are some jobs you'd like to have in the future? Future jobs. Could be from a doctor to an engineer to a politician, robot maker, lots of different stuff. World peace, yeah. Doctor, statistician. And can you imagine any of these problems being solved with AI or these jobs interacting with AI in the future? Yeah, for sure. In the future, there will be a lot of interaction between these two. And we'll show you in the next slide how AI interacts with existing jobs.
Okay, so the first thing is how AI is changing education. So new AI now can help the classroom by listening to the teachers and create sublines for hard of hearing students or translate to different languages. So if you go to another country and maybe you can use these tools to understand what the teacher is talking about. And also they can develop personalized learning for individuals. And the second thing is very helpful for the teachers. So they can help teachers keep track of their students and monitor what they are doing. So example, there's a website called Go Guardian. So this website, this algorithm can help the teacher to see what their students are looking at, what website or videos they are watching. And we have automatically grade systems that this website here, Grade Score, can help the teacher to grade their work by using scan and AI skills. And we have a video here to show how they works.
Great.
It's not letting me play the video at the moment. Just go to the next slide.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. And now we can watch this video about how AI is changing medicine.
There's been many innovations over the years that drive science. If you go back in history, many scientific insights actually derived from new tools that were able to measure new things. AI is very, very good at finding new paths that haven't been seen before. It's almost an enhancement on our ability to sense the world.
The main benefit of machine learning is the ability to learn from lots and lots of data.
We can show a computer a lot of examples, and rather than tell a model how to evaluate that data, it can learn actually how to interpret it and figure out what to do next.
Here at Google, we've been using machine learning technologies in all of our products, things like search, translate, Google Photos, and the Assistant.
People are realizing that learning from examples is a very powerful tool.
So researchers in the healthcare community were looking at some of the work that Google was doing in artificial intelligence and actually reached out to us and said, is there a way that you could apply these same kind of technologies in healthcare? Doctors today have more artificial intelligence working for them on their smartphone for their personal use than they have working for them in the clinical context.
And as doctors, we've just gotten more information kind of shoved at us in terms of records, in terms of images.
Think about all the different types of cells that you have.
15,000, 20,000 different diagnosis codes.
Just a cubic millimeter of tissue, it's like taking, a billion photos.
If you print it out, they would probably be about as tall as a 10-story building.
Really, any kind of data that people can generate on a massive scale is really an area where machine learning can help.
Now there's an opportunity to use all our digital technologies that have been developed at Google to really try to help doctors.
Let's take some of these tools that are great for analyzing videos in YouTube and apply them to problems that matter to science.
One of the things we've been working on in medical imaging is in the area of pathology. Traditionally, pathologists take some tissue sample and they look around in this sea of cells looking for the kind of needle in haystack cancerous tissue.
We know that the earlier you detect the cancer, the greater your chance of curing it, and the greater your chance of curing it without chemotherapy or radiation. So the biggest challenges are speed and accuracy of diagnosis. So far, we've trained models for breast cancer and prostate cancer.
These technologies can actually identify suspicious areas to direct the doctor's attention.
So one of the things we wanted to do was get this work into the hands of as many people as possible.
And so we developed something called the augmented reality microscope, where you can actually see machine learning assistants overlaid in real time as you're looking through the microscope.
These units can be attached onto any existing microscope, greatly reducing the cost. We're really excited to bring machine learning to parts of the world with limited access.
One of the tools some biologists use is they will dye cells with different colors to highlight certain important features that make sense to them.
The problem is you have to kill the cells in order to color them.
So we said, well, if we can do this virtually in a computer, we can preserve the cell in its natural state.
One of the things that you can do on your Pixel phone right now is, given a selfie, you can predict the depth and you can do interesting visual effects. So we thought, hey, can we take this same technology and apply it in a biological context? And essentially use machine learning to predict the stain. We weren't sure whether this would work or not, and it ended up working so well. We're very hopeful that this technology can be used to just have the computer generate the pretty pictures that people know how to interpret.
The brain is probably the most complex physical object in the known universe. We know that there are these basic units called neurons, and they're connected in many different ways. What's shocking is how little is known about what those patterns of connectivity look like and what that means for how the brain works. The problem is very hard because the connections are too large to analyze. For example, fly brain has 100,000 neurons, whereas a human brain has 100 billion neurons. So fortunately at Google, there's been already a lot of work put into dealing with data sets of that size. Machine learning and the computer vision technology that we've developed has been designed to accurately trace the wiring of the brain in 3D. Prior to that technology, it would have taken thousands of years to basically finish mapping the fly brain. Now
Okay, yeah, I think we're done. That's good. All right, so we know now machine learning can help analyze vast amount of medical data and make faster and more accurate diagnosis. Also recognize disease before symptoms shows. So if now you give AI a bunch of brain tumor scans, the AI can analyze them and identify the patterns so that if you give a scan of a human brain, it can tell if the person has brain tumors or not. Is that cool? Okay. So maybe one day AI can take the doctor's jobs away, and now we can look at how AI is changing everything. So, oops.
Okay, so the next section that we're going to go over is jobs in AI. So today we're going to go over 8 different categories of jobs in AI. So as a disclaimer, these are not the only categories of jobs that there are in AI, because AI is a very large field. And at many times these career paths and these like specific fields, also they overlap. So there's no set in stone path that you have to take. These 8 categories are just to give a general idea of the careers that are available in AI. Okay, so the first one we're going to go over is AI researchers. So this is a very important job. AI wouldn't exist without these researchers. These researchers think of new ideas of AI and figure out how to make them work. They also take existing AI and figure out new ways to use them. And they mostly work at universities or company labs. So for AI researchers, interest in a subject is very important, because for most of the time, AI researchers are going to work in a specific field doing research for AI in that specific field. So you have to be interested in the subjects that you're going to be doing research into. Also, creative thinking is very important for AI researchers, because you have to constantly figure out new ideas or new ways to solve a situation or a problem. And also, your ability to document and communicate ideas is also very important. For example, if you can't document your ideas, other people might not understand what you're trying to say, or if you do make the AI work, they won't understand how it works. The next career path we're going to talk about is AI engineers. So AI engineers write the software that makes AI and machine learning work. Some of these AI engineers are also researchers. And for AI engineers, math, especially statistics, is very important. Also, programming skills are probably the most important for AI engineers, because they're the ones that actually have to write the software that makes the AI and machine learning work. So without them, no matter how good the ideas the AI researchers have, none of them will be able to be implemented if it weren't for the engineers. Also, problem solving is very important, since obviously if your code doesn't work, you have to figure out a way to make it work. If the AI doesn't work, you have to figure out how to make it work. And your ability to learn is also very important, because always there's going to be new discoveries made about AI or new ideas, and you have to be able to figure out how to learn and adjust and adapt to these. So the next path is being a CEO of an AI company. So you guys know who CEOs are. They basically run the company and manage everyone under the company. So basically they oversee and run the company like a normal CEO, and also decide the company's strategy or approach when it comes to AI. For example, some companies maybe develop certain AI for a certain field, like for example, the medical field, or maybe they're like an AI company in general, or maybe they just might be a company that uses AI. And also some important skills for this job is business skills, which is obviously very important for a CEO. You have to manage everyone and oversee the whole company. And you also have to understand how AI can help the company. You have to have a clear vision of how AI is going to be used for your company specifically. And the next career path is data scientists. So data scientists, they clean, collect, and process data. So basically, they're the ones who are going to give data they're the ones who use the data and figure out how to give it to the AI and what the AI is going to do with it. And they help the AI analyze the data. And so obviously for data scientists, math and statistics especially is very important. Statistics because they have to deal with data, and also it's important to know programming and also design.
AI policymakers is another field, but it was created very recently. It's a very new field. AI policymakers define the guidelines for laws surrounding AI to make sure they don't take too much personal information and to make sure that they are regulated and working just as the way they are. And AI policymakers also plan how to develop AI in given countries, maybe smaller countries, as bigger countries often have better ways to get AI. And to be an AI policymaker, you will need to have an understanding and experience of AI and the law to be able to integrate both of them together. And you have to have communication and people skills in order to make sure that everyone understands your guidelines properly. AI ethicists is another field which is fairly new. They create guidelines for companies to follow. And while doing this, they consider risks of new AI software that are being introduced into the market, and they find out how to avoid them and mitigate them. And they connect to policymakers and customers. And to be an AI ethicist, you will need to have a thorough understanding of AI, and it's recommended to have an experience in AI as well, just to ensure that you will know what to change if something goes wrong. And an example of AI ethics are is what Google put in, and Google said that AI had to be regulated and it can't take up too much personal information to protect the data of customers. And we have a video over here which I can play.
When people wonder what is AI, they think about robots.
Robots.
Let's make a distinction. The robot itself is hardware. AI is software.
What is artificial intelligence? Systems that mimic, perhaps even go beyond our own ability to think and to process information.
It determines who we want to date, whether we get a certain kind of loan, operating at all levels of our economy, in the political realm, in the judicial system, employment practices, in the educational system. All of these decisions help to determine how well or how poorly our lives go, and increasingly, AI is involved in those decisions. We are right to be concerned when we are just now learning to think about the social and ethical implications of using AI.
So many of our own stories are about the relationship between the creation and the creator.
So we're at this inflection point right now. Suddenly, all of this data, these algorithms, and the computational power is available.
And that's really been the breakthrough.
Things are becoming real that we've talked about, we've dreamt about for decades. AI which can do a very specific, narrow task.
That can recognize voice, navigate a car, translate language. And if this is going to be the ubiquitous tool,
we're doing ourselves a disservice by not educating the general population also on what is really going on right now.
We have so many immediate concerns about the kind of AI that will be developed that we really need to devote most of our educational efforts to those kinds of problems. Artificial intelligence uses a massive amount of data to recognize certain kinds of patterns that are correlated with a successful result.
Hidden in these vast pools of data that we're now using are remarkable opportunities to run off the rails.
So we have to be careful about the data we give it.
Data can be bad because it's not been properly labeled, because it's inaccurate, because it has baked into it certain human biases that are naturally a part of society.
One clear example of data bias is the use of algorithms to make decisions about the fate of prisoners.
If you have enough data points, you should be able to judge a person's likelihood of reoffending. Well, the problem is,
if there is bias hidden in the data, your outcome in the judicial system may be very different than someone who's upper middle class and white.
Why is it projecting higher risk scores onto Black defendants? It often turns out that the algorithm itself isn't feeding on any data that's explicitly labeled in terms of race. A zip code doesn't tell you anything about a person's race. What the machine learns is, people in this zip code are more likely to be criminal, when in fact it may just be that they're more likely to be Black or poor or any other category that is a subject of biased practices.
These technologies will actually reinforce some of the worst aspects of our society, which is really a great tragedy because the technology has the potential to actually do exactly the opposite.
Machines aren't racist, machines aren't sexist, machines aren't ableist or classist. We are.
Our biases will get not only embedded in this one program, but get scaled out rapidly.
Silicon Valley has been a magnet for all the world's best but it also tends to be dominated by white males.
AI has a white guy problem.
It's going to be crucial for us to have different kinds of diversity to be part of the development of AI.
Who builds these AI systems and what data are we using in them is vital.
What I see is a generation that takes all kinds of life instructions from its device, whether it is where to go to eat Korean barbecue or who to marry. It all comes magically out of the palm of your hand from an algorithm that you know nothing about.
Who's behind that screen? Who's on the other end of the wire?
What are the motivations of the algorithm? People no longer even think to ask. It's just so convenient.
That ability to predict and then modify our behavior, perhaps even without us fully understanding why or how.
If you want the machine to behave in an ethical manner, you have to know why it does what it does.
Part of the transparency is to be able to explain the logical steps that it went through to arrive at a certain recommendation.
When we are training these machine learning algorithms, we're supplying it 1 million pictures of cats. And we just say, that's a picture of a cat. We don't say, that's a picture of a cat because of the ears and the tail, the whisker and the nose and all that.
The machine itself starts to recognize that such and such is a cat and such is not a cat.
We don't actually know how the circuit has reached that particular set of conclusions.
Hot dog, not hot dog, whatever. That's funny. Fire missile, not fire missile. That's not funny.
The particular nature of the technology that's being rolled out, they're so complex and they operate on such large data sets that the function of the algorithm is largely eluding the designers.
And maybe that's part of the regulation that will be built around AI. You cannot explain what this program has done. It just should not be released to humankind.
And there is this movement starting where more and more people say, well, we need to be able to audit this. We need to be able to understand what's going on.
We're about to bump into things that we really have not thought about as a human species. The notion that you can interact with a bot on the internet and it can affect your propensity to vote one way or another is a tremendous threat to democracy.
Autonomous weapons is a terrifying concept.
Drones with smart algorithms being turned into weapons.
There is a legitimate fear that the power of artificial intelligence will be disproportionately put in the hands of the already powerful.
Should we give it to the rich because they can afford it? There is a popular view that over a couple decade period we'll have no jobs at all.
It's not a binary.
So some questions. What sort of risks are companies worried about when it comes to AI? Type some possible risks in the chat. Bias? Yeah, exactly. Artificial intelligence softwares learn on their own. So if you give it a specific amount of data, it might make a bias based on that amount of data and make the wrong decisions based on that bias. So definitely bias is one of the biggest problems. Another really big issue is that customers' private information might be shared without the customer's permission. Companies are definitely worried about that. And they're also worried about not understanding how the AI works. So when the AI tells them something, they will not understand how the AI came to that conclusion. And what are the companies doing about it? Do any of you guys know? Exactly. They're trying to set rules and regulations. Like we talked about on the previous slide, the policymakers try to make regulations to make sure that AI does not take too much data. Not using AI is not a solution, as AI is the future, and a lot of companies are trying to use it. And they're trying to make responsible and safe decisions about AI and its practices. So another career path is an AI artist, and they make art using AI. And to be an AI artist, you obviously need to be creative in order to come up with good art pieces. You need to have artistic skill in order to be a good artist, and you need to understand how the AI technology works. And here's a small example of how it works. So you can take a style, let's say Mona Lisa, and then this thing, and then it combines them, and there should be an output. It's not loading at the moment, but it combines the pictures into a new thing using AI. and it's really cool. And AI writers is another job. It's fairly new, although it's been around for a little bit. Basically, artificial intelligence is evolving into a place where people can talk to them and interact with them, such as we talked about earlier when you talk to them to order something from a restaurant or a live chat with them. And AI writers decide the personalities of the AI assistants, and they basically teach them how to talk, have emotions, and respond to other people. And to be an AI a writer, you need to have an understanding of how people talk, interact, and what that says about their personality in order to be able to teach the AI how to interact with others and talk to them. So what do all of these jobs relating to AI have in common? Type it in the chat if you have any ideas. They all have to do with AI, yeah, of course. Yeah, they all have AI involved, and most of them are fairly new as AI just started to be released into the market. And yeah, and how are they different? What are some of the big differences? I think it's really interesting how they all involve AI, but it can be used in basically any field and still provide an advantage to the person using it. That's the beauty of AI. And let's do a poll. Which categories of AI are you most interested in from 1 through 8? Wow, a lot of you guys said AI researcher. I think that's definitely an interesting one. And that might be one of the most common ones right now, as a lot of people are researching in AI. A lot of you said CEO of an AI company. That's also a very good job, but it's hard to get up there, as to become a CEO, you have to climb all the ranks of the company. That's definitely a good thing. AI artist is definitely a really cool profession as well. It's really interesting how art can be used with AI. Data scientist, machine learning engineer. These are all very interesting professions for sure. And finally, we have a Kahoot. Start. One second. All right.
So yeah, give us a second. Oh, he's got it. All right, while we're waiting for Pranava to get the Kahoot, we can just talk a little bit more about going into AI in college. All right, so yeah, following it into high school, since most of you are middle schoolers and elementary schoolers, if you really want to go into AI as an adult, in your professions, then you definitely would want to be joining some extracurriculars that have to do with AI. For example, joining our team at Code-A-Wish is a great way to get involved. Just email us if you want any opportunities. Also, joining robotics is a huge opportunity to get more involved with AI. Joining computer science clubs, coding clubs, most high schools have one. And if not, you should definitely feel free to start it. Yeah, Pranava, is it loading or something?
Just before we play the Kahoot game, since the AI artist website didn't really work, this is another example of AI with artists. They use AI code programming to make a model of like dancing, everybody dancing right now. So you guys can watch the video. It's pretty fun.
I still feel pain. Whatever I do, still feels the same.
Yeah, the sound is not good right now.
Basically, this is not real person, and this is the source of video. So they use this code to get the detected position, like the pose the person made, and translate to this AI here. And this person here will dance like the real person. So it's pretty cool.
Okay, it's fine, Lucy. We don't have to play the video. I want to give an opportunity for attendees of this meeting while we're getting ready for the Kahoot. If they have any questions or if they want to talk, and we can unmute them, or you can actually come up here as a panelist and talk yourself. So just raise your hand if you want to say anything or talk about AI or ask any questions about Code-A-Wish as an organization or going into AI as a high schooler, doing anything like that. But yeah, is there anything else any of the other panelists want to say? All right, great. Okay, we could just go to the Kahoot now. I think we have 20 minutes. That's about enough time.
Yeah, let's go to the Kahoot.
Actually, just before that, I just wanted to say a couple of things. So I know everyone today, we went through a lot of the jobs that primarily deal with AI, right? Data science. And then we talked a little bit about AI, like the ethics of AI, and we talked about policymakers. So if you're interested in other fields, right? If you're interested in law, you're interested in philosophy, right? This is a very unique moment in time where we're actually able to converge your humanities interest and your STEM interest together. So, you know, really think about, like, don't think about a problem just from one perspective, because usually one perspective is not enough. So if you do have a separate interest, or if you are viewing a problem, try to use like a humanities idea, look at it from a law perspective, from a sociology perspective, right? And then take a look at it from the data science perspective. So that's just something that I wanted to add. We can go to Kahoot now.
Yeah, before we go to the Kahoot, let's go over to the second part of this video. It shows a lot of insights about how AI is going to influence the world in the future.
What I see is a generation that takes all kinds of life instructions from its device, whether it is where to go to eat Korean barbecue or who to marry. It all comes magically out of the palm of your hand from an algorithm that you know nothing about.
Who's behind that screen? Who's on the other end of the wire?
What are the motivations of the algorithm? People no longer even think to ask. It's just so convenient.
That ability to predict and then modify our behavior, perhaps even without us fully understanding why or how.
If you want the machine to behave in an ethical manner, you have to know why it does what it does.
Part of the transparency is to be able to explain the logical steps that it went through to arrive at a certain recommendation.
When we are training these machine learning algorithms, we're supplying it 1 million pictures of cats. And we just say, that's a picture of a cat. We don't say, that's a picture of a cat because of the ears and the tail, the whisker and the nose and all that.
The machine itself starts to recognize that such and such is a cat and such is not a cat.
We don't actually know how the circuit has reached that particular set of conclusions.
Hot dog, not hot dog, whatever. That's funny. Fire missile, not fire missile. That's not funny.
The particular nature of the technology that's being rolled out, they're so complex and they operate on such large data sets that the function of the algorithm is largely eluding the designers.
And maybe that's part of the regulation that will be built around AI. You cannot explain what this program has done. It just should not be released to humankind.
And there is this movement starting where more and more people say, well, we need to be able to audit this. We need to be able to understand what's going on.
We're about to bump into things that we really have not thought about as a human species. The notion that you can interact with a bot on the internet and it can affect your propensity to vote one way or another is a tremendous threat to democracy.
Autonomous weapons is a terrifying concept.
Drones with smart algorithms being turned into weapons.
There is a legitimate fear that the power of artificial intelligence will be disproportionately put in the hands of the already powerful.
Should we give it to the rich because they can afford it? There is a popular view that over a couple decade period we'll have no jobs at all.
It's not a binary like, do I have a job in the future or not? It's how is my job going to change?
This isn't a bubble. AI is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger part of everything.
And this might be the way that we get to the stars, get to the bottom of the ocean,
Cure cancer, fix climate change.